Welcome, everybody, to the Focus, Freedom, and Flow podcast. I'm your co host, Jackson Ferguson, and I'm joined by my co host, Axel Louison. We're absolutely thrilled about our conversation today with Adrien Plavsic. When you visit his website, the first thing you see is master your mind, elevate your game, and transform your life. And we love that because that's exactly what this podcast is about. So today we're looking forward to learning from someone who has reached some of the highest levels in professional sports. Adrien is a former NHL player who also played pro in Europe.
On the first goal, but this time the Canucks make the defensive play and Bure starts back, drops it off. Here's Plavsic in. Plavsic scores.
And he also won Olympic silver medal with Team Canada in 1992 in the Winter Games in Albertville. And so in this episode, we'll talk about his career, the reality behind pro sports, and his journey that led him where he is today, which is helping athletes develop mental mastery. And also maybe try to understand what that means. So, Adrien, thank you so much for being here with us today.
I'm honored, Jackson, Axel, really looking forward to just sharing stories, experiences, and let's see what comes out of this. You connect minds together, and I always say there's magic that happens, and hopefully we'll get to serve a lot of people.
So maybe let's start at the beginning. I think a lot of us know that childhood often lays a foundation on our path in life. So maybe can you tell us a little bit where you're from, your childhood, and what experience maybe shaped you and led you to where you're at today?
Well, I would say, our roots, we all have roots, and we can't go way back. But I think these things they talk about generational trauma and things that go on in the generational line. My parents were born in Croatia, so the former Yugoslavia. My dad's half Serb, half Croatian. So already within that, there's a conflict because a lot of conflicts come from that part of the world. And my parents immigrated to Canada looking for a better life. And my brother who's passed away, and my sisters, well, we're all born in Canada. So we feel Canadian. But we can definitely see what I saw is that I was carrying stuff that wasn't necessarily mine from a young age. There's things that I struggled and I noticed early on in life. So I would say one of the things is my sisters, me, my brother, we were all extremely anxious. There was that thing that kind of was you're the dragon that you have to slay or overcome. But something early on, with hockey, I struggled with anxiety. So my parents came, but a lot of people come over, but they never leave their past, behind. They carry it with them into, this new opportunity, which was Canada.
So how did you handle that anxiety when you were young? Because I think a lot of us also have that for different reasons, but I can relate to that. So how did you handle that when you were young?
My biggest, probably from a young age, I learned to dissociate. You're trying to play at the highest level. Hockey kept me. It gave me a vision, something to really focus on. Because when you're young, you don't know what's normal, what's not. All you know is like, wow, the environment that you're in. So I would say I learned to dissociate myself and really kind of, numb things and, okay, um, deal with it in like, oh, I'll just kind of ignore it, hope it passes. And another word you can use is suppress. But whatever you suppress eventually comes out in different ways. But I would say in positive intelligence, which I'm a coach, we call that the avoider. So the avoider is someone that avoids anything that's difficult, and everybody has different patterns they use in a way to cope with challenges or things that are difficult in life. I had a bit of an avoider, but I also had a hyperachiever, which is this hunger to achieve. Because when I got success and I was good at something, I saw that, people treated me well, that I was significant. So those two patterns were playing out fairly at a young age.
And so one of the reason we're talking tonight together and we connected is because of your LinkedIn post. I really love what you post on LinkedIn. And one thing I read, you said that happiness wasn't celebrated growing up. And so I'm wondering what you meant by that and also what impact that had on you.
From a young age, when you look at kids, one of the videos I love to show, clients, or when I do presentations, is these toddlers in a room with snakes that were trained to be around people, but they're big, and you see these toddlers like try to grab the snake and put in their mouth, like there's no fear. Uh, I think most of our fears are conditioned, and uh, my parents and the way they grew up, there was a lot of vigilance about safety. So everything in the outside world seemed like a threat. So if life is seen through the lens of being a threat, you activate that survival part of the brain, and the happiness part, the part that's kind of innate. When we're kids, we have this, innate curiosity, adventure, playfulness, the joy is diminished. And that's what I would say. So growing up, the negative was overemphasized, and, the positive was, I would say, underemphasized.
What you're sharing now, a lot of people can relate to it, and we'll get into how that probably led to some wisdom and some awakening and the beautiful things that you're sharing now. But we'll get to that maybe after. So you're pretty young, you're 17, and you go from Canada to U.S. University in New Hampshire. And so maybe, and after 1 year, so after your freshman year, you got drafted in the NHL. So at 18, so that's very young to become pro. So maybe can you share a little bit about that journey? Because that must have been something pretty amazing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think from just go back a little bit, if I can,
Mhm.
from, 12 to, from 10 to 14, I was average. And I just loved the game of hockey and put so much time into it. And then at 14, 15, I just took off. And that's when my coaches pulled me aside and said, well, you might have a future in this game. And all of a sudden, I just got better and better. And 16, they start coming around universities. They start looking to recruit you, and got offered a full scholarship at the University of New Hampshire. French, I went to French school. So grew up in the French environment. I was in an English community, the West Island of Montreal, and ended up going there as a 17-year-old in Quebec. They didn't have grade 12 in Ontario. They did. In Quebec was grade 11. So I went straight to from grade 11 to university in the States. So I, you know, people who were 22, 21, and I was like a French speaking kid in an English university. So you can imagine the shock, it was so big for me. Uh, and really enjoyed it, but I was also, I think, anxious about the experience. And the thing that I knew was playing hockey. So when I got drafted, second round, the following year, I got drafted by St. Louis. They offered me a contract right away, and I turned pro. Which today I think I would look back and say I would have done it different because sometimes, getting at 18, how many players are really ready for the NHL, the NBA? I would say not many. There's a learning curve, and physically, you're not really mature. So I would say the majority would profit from, staying in school for 4 years and lifting a lot of weights, being around, um, guys who are older who can mentor you. I was 18 and just jumped into on the NHL stage. I didn't play right away in the NHL, played in the IHL, which is the farm system, but it was a lot to take in.
I also experienced, so I did 3 years in the US. I also went at 17 years old, from 17 to 20 years old. And I I remember what I really liked about that experience, even though the culture is maybe not that different, but there are differences. And I remember I loved going back and forth, like going from one semester and then coming back home, going back because it was like every time it put light on different aspects of myself. And every time I came back, I remember kind of unconsciously, but playing with who I was. I could start over and be a little different, and it shed light on a lot of things in me. So that back and forth every semester really, I think, helped me grow and wider my perspective on, on life. And so can you share maybe a little bit more about that transition from Canada to US, what it did to you and how it helped your mind? And
Yeah, I would definitely say, I mean, if when I was at that age, all I had as a vision was to get to the NHL. So I wasn't thinking in terms of like what's going to happen after hockey and investing in myself. I remember, I mean, one story is just a girl that was 21 and I was 17, and she was like hitting on me, and I was so nervous that experience of like being in a school where everybody's older and you didn't go to English school. What I remember about it is, being around my teammates, the food. Uh, but I remember not really wanting totally to be there. I wanted to be in in a hockey environment. So I didn't fully take it in. I was just trying to get by in terms of the marks, and then I knew that I was one of the high prospects and that I would go high in the draft. And I think I made up my mind while I was in school that I was going to turn pro. So my experience was probably a little bit different than yours.
so then you spent about around 9 years, I think, in the NHL, the AHL, for several teams like the St. Louis Blues, Vancouver Canucks, Tampa Bay Lightning, and Mighty Ducks of Anaheim. And so, yeah, what can you share from? I'm sure we're all very interested of what it is to be pro, to play pro, and maybe what surprised you and how was that experience?
Yeah, the biggest thing I'll share with you is the thing I talk about now is stepping into the arena. Do you know the Roosevelt, the man in the arena, the excerpt from the speech? So it goes, it's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong person stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them differently. The credit belongs to the person who's actually in the arena, and it goes on and on. I'm not going to tell you, but I know it. So what I realized with time is like you can be in the arena playing in front of 20,000 people, but part of you is afraid to be there because you carry baggage, or well, we go back to the fears, to the protective mechanisms. So I would say there's a part of me that wanted that so badly but a part of me was hesitant. And I think that's where the anxiety comes from. I think anxiety, in some ways, it's almost like our bodies are so intelligent that they'll create things to protect you. You know, that's the way you're perceiving things. So I was in the arena playing in front of 20,000 people, but fully emotionally, like totally invested. I would say, you ever hear the expression 1 foot in, 1 foot out? I say I wasn't fully there. I didn't throw myself in and know that I'm going to claim this, fully claim it. It was more like, oh, let's see what happens. And so I think this is what I also teach today is like, what does it look like to really step in the arena? Well, you got to be willing to fail. You got to be willing to look bad. You got to be yourself. And often, one of the things I say is we're so worried about how others will perceive us. That was really strong in me. And that, there's no way you can fully play and live into your potential if that's sort of what's going on as a program playing in the background.
And I have a question. Did you ever struggle with ego when switching leagues up or down? And how did you manage that internally? Because I am friend with the Mason family. Do you know?
No, which
Mason
family?
family, Steve Mason, Doug Mason.
Steve Mason. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh,
So I'm friend with them, and when I told them that I will have you as a guest as a host, I mean, I'm as a guest on the podcast, they asked me this question for you. Did you
okay.
ever struggle with ego when switching leagues up or down, and how did you manage that mentally?
Yes. So you mean like my ego in terms of going back and forth? I would say when I went down, my skill level was pretty high. I was a great skater. So I went down, I felt a little more liberated, you know. I played with more ease, so it was easier for me to get into flow. When you're up in the NHL, your one mistake, you might sit as a young player. So you're already, if you're wired to be hyper vigilant, you're gonna play it safe. You're not gonna just go out and play your game. You're gonna play on the defensive, play it safe. So I felt a level of anxiety when I went to the NHL, and I think when I played in the minors, it wasn't as present. But ultimately, where I wanted to be was the NHL. And I mean, as you asked me the questions, there was a breakthrough for me where I went from having a two-way contract, which means they're not sure if you're a pure NHLer. They give you a minor league clause or an NHL clause, and the money difference, the contract difference is huge. So once they give you a one-way contract, they consider that you have the goods to be an NHL player, and that I ended up getting in 1992. So I hope I answered your question, but I probably felt more liberated playing in the minors because, yeah, my skills, I could take a bigger role than I could in the NHL.
Yeah, thanks. And so now, what would you say to someone that's living the same thing? Because Axel and I, we also coach athletes, and I coach several young people. And I mean, it seems like that's exactly one of the main struggles they have. They want to be somewhere, and when they're there, like you said, they don't fully step in. So I really love that. And so maybe two questions. The first question is, were you aware of that going on inside yourself, of not stepping in fully? Were you aware of that? And how today what would you tell to an athlete that's living the same thing?
Yeah, great question. So was I aware? I think I always was because I was an extremely sensitive person. I think that's why I was drawn to mindfulness. I think it's always, in terms of anxiety, if you look at it on a scale to 1 to 10, if you're like at a 10, it's hard to be aware. It's like you're so pulled in by that anxiety. It's like sleepless nights, you can't even eat that much because your stomach, disrupts your stomach. So I was aware, but the emotions and the sensations in my body were so strong that I was more consumed by that than being mindful. And so, if I look back, the stuff that I did was really meditation, start doing breathing, but I didn't really have someone guiding me along who said, like, this is going to work, like, commit to it. So, dabbling versus devotion, it looks a whole lot different. So at 56 now, I'm totally devoted. It's like someone who is a black belt at something and someone who's not a black belt. So I would say the advice I would give to young kids is like, if you really want to claim it, you got to live. The training is not just when you go to the rink, it's all the time. You train your mind all the time. You're noticing things about yourself all the time. You're being mindful, and you're committing to doing that work, whether it's breath work, meditation. The benefits are huge, but you're really committing to that. And the biggest thing, if I would do different, it is I would step into whatever I'm scared of. I didn't, it's like do you know the story of buffaloes and cows? When
No.
there's a storm, well, you know, cows, there's a storm, they go away from it. And the storm's always chasing them, and they're like suffering through that, and they can never, leave it until it goes away. Buffaloes, they go right into it. They go right into it. And there's a moment where it's difficult, but once they go through that, they're free on the other side. I think it's a great metaphor because we're so thinking like we have to run away from our fears, but actually the solution is to run right into them. I think that is the biggest advice I would tell someone is you're going to come out a better person, a better version of you if you go like right into the storm, which is counterintuitive because your body gives you all these signals when, you know, fear gets activated. So does that make sense?
Totally, yeah. Thank you so much. And I really like to get practical, like to really understand, okay, so how do you do that? And for me, um, so I'd like to maybe that we share a little bit, how do you go into the storm? Because to me, the foundation is really, and we can maybe talk more now about mindfulness since you brought it up, and we're all mindfulness practitioners. To me, it's the establishments of mindfulness. So there's mindfulness of the body, emotions, and thoughts. And so that's the key. Like when you step into your fear, when you step into something that's uncomfortable, you're gonna have a bodily reaction, you have emotion, and then you have the thoughts, the stories. And to me, the trap are the stories. If you go into your mind and the talkative mind and the stories, that's when you fall in trap and there's kind of no way out. And the way to me to go into the storm, like the buffaloes, is coming back to the body. It's bringing awareness to the body, being present to the body, the emotions that are there, and that will generate wisdom, strength, confidence. That's kind of my way of seeing it. I don't know how you share it, and if you want to talk about it a little bit more, also.
Sure. I mean, it's again, it's like the rewiring process of rewiring your brain because, like, these, neural pathways associations that were made, they were not made in one day. They've been ongoing. So it's easier for you. If I went into anxiety, it got easier for me to go into it. So breaking those patterns, it's always, I don't know who says that, it's always hard in the beginning, messy in the middle, and gorgeous in the end. Anytime you change something new. So already, if you understand that it's going to be hard in the beginning, like you can be mindful, you say, okay, this is part of the process, but am I willing and devoted enough to to weather that and to get on the other side where I'm going to get all the benefits. My way is definitely, I've always, now the breath is something so powerful. I do deep intrinsic breathing where I'm trying to get these deep muscles to really move and try to get a depth to my breathing. So now when I take a breath, it's almost like it's got such a anesthetizing effect because I've worked it so much. So it calls me right away. But when I had the anxiety, it didn't. So I think there's different things. I totally agree with body. We do in PQ, positive intelligence. We rub our fingertips, notice our feet on the floor, notice breathing, like get back into your body, be where your feet are. I think one of your, I
Yeah,
think it was
Graham
Graham who
Pitchford.
said that we use that in the mental performance I learned too, be where your feet are. So it's like having the awareness when you're anxious, when fear kicks in, can you bring some of your attention, at least a bit, to your body, to your feet. And the more you recognize that, the more you're interrupting, that habitual pattern that's been formed, I think, for a long time. So I would definitely agree. I do that, the breath, and then sometimes just like, physically, you know, get into action, like just disrupt the whole pattern. Like you're afraid, like go do something bold. I'll give you an example that happened to me. I was preparing for this speech and it was a contest, and I prepared so much that my I had a blank when I got up there. So I had a blank and I just kind of walked off. And the gift in that is, before I would have felt all this shame, things I used to know, like, oh, now I'm, not very good. Like it set me back. And I would have waited. I would have been hesitant. I signed up for a speech the next week and went right back into it and delivered a great speech. So it's really like overriding that, protective mechanism. The brain wants to keep us safe, but if you direct it and you do it enough, it's gonna start to obey. So you have to be the master. I guess that's what, mastering yourself is going sometimes against these these habitual patterns that were created, knowing that, no, this is not the way I want to be in life. So I'm going to, step into the storm and do what the buffaloes did.
And I'm also curious to Axel to hear your side of it. I don't know if it's okay for you to share a little bit how you step in the storm and you go through the storms. I don't know if you want to share a little bit on that.
What I realize is that, like you said, Adrien, you will be always scared. I mean, this is how I feel like when I have to do something that I'm not used to. Let's say I'm not playing a lot, and the coach sub me in, and I have to go on the court, and I have to play. I have to be ready. I have to show the coach, the teammates, the fans that I'm ready. But I didn't play for a long time. During the game, I was on the bench. I'm scared, and what I realize now is that there's no the choice to face the fear and to be ready to fail. I think that was one of the things that I missed in my career. At some point, many times I wasn't ready to fail. I was only ready to succeed. I'm gonna make this. I'm strong, but this is the only way. I cannot fail. I cannot fail. But this is wrong. For me, like I realize now I'm 30 years old that if you're not ready to fail 100%, you cannot succeed. And this is what I realized. So this is how I step in the game. Like I'm just say to myself, I want to do this, but I'm ready to. And but this is scary. This is a scary feeling to admit that I'm ready to fail and to have all the judgment if I fail. But the other side is that if you succeed, then it's great. But at the same time, if you fail, you can bounce back the next day or the next action during the game. And but the other part, I would say that sometimes I think I wasn't ready to fail because, let's say, during the game, you have only one opportunity to show the coach, to show the teammate, to show yourself that you're capable of. And I think this is why most of the young players, including myself when I was young, are ready to fail because we don't want to fail in this moment because we think that it's gonna be the last opportunity. But I think it's wrong because opportunity always come. They might not come right away, but they will come after a few times. So yeah, this is how I step in the game.
That resonates so much with me, and it's like being in the arena is really willing to fail. That's what it says at the end is like you'll, at best, you'll know what the triumph of achievement, and at worst, well, at least if you fail while daring greatly. Um, and maybe add something to what you said. I think it's really important. You said that, what you focus on when you are scared. One of the things I heard this and it really resonated with me is we get stuck on our feelings often, so we have a feeling, so we're anxious, we're afraid. And that is probably the thing that's most out of our, control because we can't always control the way we feel when there's a big game or you have one chance to go into the game. So the feel part is where we put all our attention and focus, but where do we have more influence? Well, we have influence in the way we sound, in the way we look. And so big movements, eye contact, speaking with enthusiasm, a good posture, walking a certain way. And so that is information for your brain too. But we don't think of that because we're so stuck in the feeling that we make ourselves small, So it's kind of interesting. That's where mindfulness can help you. It's like, okay, like I can make myself big. Okay, I might be afraid, but what's confidence look like, So maybe a little bit of that fake it, but you're sending signals to your brain and your body. I think that also has an impact.
And what do you think about the phrase "fake it until you make it"? Since you brought it up.
Um, yeah, I mean, I do believe there's some truth. Is I listened just before I jumped on by chance. Tony Robbins, this guy was telling Tony, you probably know who Tony Robbins. He goes, I don't know who I am. He goes, who the hell knows who they are? He goes, I'm Tony Robbins. I created this version of myself, man. I wasn't him. I was like broke. I was, I was a different person, but he created this version by how much he invested. So he was so invested in wanting to be, to I would say it's almost like you have to pull this person out of you, because we have different sides to us, and depending on how we grew up, maybe one side got overly developed, and say for example, like the warrior, and some people are small. Well, if you're, in certain conditions, I guarantee you can get the warrior to come out. If there's a situation where you're forced to demonstrate courage. But doing that day to day, it takes an investment and it takes a lot of mental bandwidth and a lot of mindfulness to say, I'm going to work this, just in ordering a coffee, in the morning. How am I going to ask for that? So it's really interesting, but I do believe that you're wanting to, you know, step, or you're wanting that version of you that you want to be. You almost have to like bake it in a certain way until it starts to feel real for you.
What does professional mentality really means to you now compared to when you were 20 years old?
Professional mentality
Yeah.
would be totally dedicated devotion. So you've heard the expression, before enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. And then after enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. You're doing the same thing, but you're doing it with another level of devotion. So for me, when I look back, I didn't, I didn't have a routine. I kind of, kept, I would change my routine, or, I felt good here. I worked hard. I was a hard worker. But those guys that are pro, they have, the best of the best. They have a really routine where they get themselves into a state, before the game, and you can see the level of commitment. If I think of a Kobe Bryant, and a Sidney Crosby in hockey, who's played for 38, like they take care of themselves, and their level of preparation, mentally with their body is pretty incredible. So looking back, I would have put all my focus on the controllables, and everything outside what is outside my control. I would have, worked on not having my attention drift to those things.
Thank you. I maybe now want to keep digging into that, and you have really, I invite everybody to go check out your LinkedIn post, because I wrote down a few great quotes, but like one of them is, you wrote, you trust your next heartbeat, you trust your next breath, so why don't you trust yourself when it matters? And maybe I want to get into the idea of the state of flow, because I think that's something that now is often referred to, and a lot of athletes you talk to, that's like what they want to achieve. We all played sports, we all have been in the zone, we know what it is. But so what do you teach to athletes nowadays, or about finding this flow, about trusting yourself, and the link maybe with mindfulness in presence?
Yeah, great question. I think, flow is not something you can force. It's, if you look at, there's in terms of like something being a real challenge, and you having, the competence, the skill level. So if something's way too hard for your skill level, it's very difficult to get into flow. But it takes me back to 1992, when I came back from the Olympics and I got a shot in Vancouver. And I was, last 16 games, I was on fire. I just had 11 points as a defenseman, and I was so nervous, but for some reason everything kind of like came together. And I think I was often in this state of flow during that stretch. And when I look at some of the passes I made, I go, I don't even recognize, like I don't see where did I see that? Like it's not like I saw it. It's just like a part of me saw that play that I could. So it happens within a fraction of a second. What I would say is, often when we have like nerves and that hit of adrenaline, we fight against it and we resist. But if we would go towards it, like if we would kind of accept it, little bit what Graham says, like accept it and go with it. I think the byproduct of that is once we started, once the game starts, you'd probably activate more of that flow. So getting yourself in challenging situations, and sometimes I think that the training like are too easy. When we train, we we train like easy, and I think there's a time to train easy, but I think there should be also moments where training really stretches you, so when you get into the game it feels a lot easier. So I would say, getting players to, when they go and practice, is like, imagine you're in game situations. Like, I remember we would wear a vest sometime, a weighted vest, and you would do practice with that weighted vest. So imagine 1 hour on the ice doing all the drills and your legs are totally burning. So I think it's really challenging yourself and making the training difficult. And maybe you tell me again, what was the how would I help athletes, or how would you get into that state of flow? For me, when it happened, it was unexpected. And I think it's almost like happiness, like you just, or laughter, it kind of comes out. And then when you go, okay, I want more of it, or you're trying to reproduce it, it becomes elusive in some way.
Also, and I was wondering the link, if you see a link also with mindfulness, because exactly like you said, when you're looking for it, you're not going to get it. And maybe if you can share the
Yeah.
link with mindfulness meditation, because
Mm.
I see that there's a lot of misunderstanding on mindfulness meditation. Like you meditate to calm yourself, or you meditate to stop having thoughts, which is the
Mm.
opposite.
Yeah.
Mindfulness is about letting go, and every instant there's fear, because every instant don't know what's coming, and there's the past that's always here with you. And so yeah, do you see what I'm saying? So maybe can you talk about the link with the mindfulness meditation practice?
Yeah. The best definition I heard of, the mindfulness when it comes to, is this teacher, Rupert Spira, who went to the airport, and the lady behind the counter, she says, what do you do? And he goes, I'm a philosopher, a mindfulness teacher. And she goes, oh, I could never meditate. And she goes, look at the line, look at the stress. And she goes, what is mindfulness or meditation? He goes, being aware of your being in the midst of experience. I love that. So to me, it's we have this ability to have a bird's eye view, like that higher view of ourselves, and it's sort of looking at everything, like all these sides that are activated, in us. And when you kind of step away and you get this detachment, I would call it a healthy detachment, not an avoiding one. You're able to look at the situation from many different angles. So for me, would be, this is what I work on every day. Every time I get triggered, like I go, oh wow, interesting. Like what part of me got triggered there? So the mindful part is that sort of higher awareness, this what do they call it, higher self, sometimes they use that, your ability to kind of have this bird eye view of everything that's happening. And so now, from that perspective, anxiety, stress, and whatever you're experiencing, fear, looks a lot different than, you being right in the eye of the storm. Does that make sense? Did that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, totally. And maybe I can share, because also I agree with the fact that it's a everyday practice. And like for me right now in this moment, like I've noticed that my body was tensing up while you were talking. So and exactly like I said, what's going on? And then I realized that I'm doubting, am I asking good questions? And so I'm losing flow. And so for me, to going back to flow in everything, like in this conversation, is noticing this tension in my body, letting go, and just I'm present. I'm present to what you're saying, and then the wisdom, the intelligence shows up by itself, and you flow back to whatever is going on. So yeah, for sure.
So good that it I mean, I'm sure you've read The Inner Game of Tennis, the self one and self
Yeah,
two.
that's great.
Hmm.
So the operating system, the body's intelligence, and now the ego is like the self one getting in the way. Oh, like the inner critic, is this good? Then you try to control, but I have those experiences, and it's wonderful when you start to notice them, and you can kind of play with them a bit. It's almost like you're an alchemist, you know. Okay, I can let go, and then all of a sudden you start to feel like you can breathe, and you're you're having a different experience. You can access, more laughter, more joy, and just show up differently.
And how do you stay mentally hungry when you keep failing and you don't see like any improvement? And let's say for young athletes, they are not probably they're not ready. Like you told us that when you were 14, you were average.
Hmm.
So in those moments when you're average, you're young, and you hear us like, okay, you have to be in the flow. You have to not be afraid to fail. How do you stay hungry for a long period of time? How do you find your motivation when you understand that you have to fail, but it's a long time. It's you want to be successful now. You don't know when it's gonna turn out. How do you stay mentally hungry? How do you find your motivation and how to stay disciplined in those moments, especially for young people?
I love that question. What a great question. So it makes me think of John Wooden. You guys know John Wooden. So you know that his first 16 years, he didn't win anything. And then all of a sudden, once he started winning, it was like 10 championships and became one of the greatest coaches of the decade. So endurance, that's what I hear. Like, how do you endure? So, time, this is what I would say to young kids. You know, you're 20 or you're 15, you're going to hit 30, whether you do this or whether you do that. You're going to hit that age. So, but, staying invested, staying hungry, believing for 15 years and doing those things and staying true to your values, developing whatever is needed for you to have that endurance. Wow, the way that's going to affect your 30-year-old, like that version of you at 30, versus if you back out and you say, oh, this is not for me. So I say you don't know what the outcome's going to be. Like, I'm sure John Wooden didn't know, but he did it out of principle. I believe he did it out of principle. And to me, when I'm like 56, I have three kids. Like, I think after my hockey career, I had a really hard time reinventing myself. A part of me wanted to give up, but I like this part of me said, like, my kids, I'm playing this game I'm playing is not just for me, it's for them too. So it's it could be for young kids like that your parents supported you. It's like that, like you want to create a better future. I don't know, you have to find that meaning for you. Like, I wish I knew what I knew now at 20. I would have played the game a whole lot differently. Like, my level of investment would be completely different. I would have been a minimalist on what I focused on and what I put my attention. And it's a world of distraction. You're going to get pulled in all different directions if you don't know, what you're all about and what's important to you. So I would say to those young kids, it's like, who do you want to be? So act like that, regardless. You don't know what the outcome's going to be, but I promise you, if you invest yourself that way, the outcome, it will be good. It'll be in your favor in some way.
I think at some point you have to be kind of crazy when you're young to think and act this way, because this is the opposite of everyone, and you have to be on your own frequency.
Yeah, totally. Like, what do they say? If everybody's going that direction, go the other way. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I think
yes.
it's okay for them to realize that, yeah, maybe they're crazy, and that's a good thing. If you're, yeah, maybe you're crazy to think that you will make it, but accept that you can fail, but be crazy enough that you think that you are capable of. And this is what I'm trying to tell them when I coach them. Like, yeah, if you want to make it, this is the path. And I know it sounds crazy because you have to step into the unknown every day. Like every day you have to step it into the future that you don't know what will happen. But this is the only way to see what you are capable of.
I think you just said it. Our relationship to uncertainty, to the unknown. When we, if I would say, I wish I would have, just said, okay, I'm going into that all the time, the unknown, and become really comfortable in doing that, because the habitual and staying in our comfort zone, I think it really does limit us. I think we're capable of so much more.
And so again, for these kids, when they are acting this way, maybe their teammates, family, friends, they will judge them, and this can interfere their belief. What advice could you give them to keep believing in themselves and not trying to listen to all the noise outside?
I think, the biggest thing is surrounding yourself with really good friends, uh, and knowing, who has your best interests. We kind of know intuitively when someone cares about us. It's usually when we try things and we have that belief they support us. So knowing who to listen and who not to listen, because sometimes you get really good advice, but it depends where it's coming from. But when someone's jealous because you're taking risk and you're daring, that's, I would say, as you go, and if you raise your level and you want to go further, you're probably going to have to let go of, people in your past. And sometimes it's even family, they're still family, but you're interacting with them differently because they might have a toxic effect on you. So you're, it's really, I think, a tough one. And I see that with kids where parents they pushed them, so much, that they lose the joy, that love of the game, because everything becomes about outcomes at such a early age. And the studies show that that's so, counterproductive really for our growth and our development.
You talked about stepping out the comfort zone, and I really enjoy now in life in general. It could be small or big, but the transitions in our lives. I think we learn a lot and we grow a lot from transition. And so there's two more transition at least in your life that I still like to talk about. The first one is then, so after the NHL, you came over to Europe. I think you played 1 year in Germany, and then you came to Switzerland and played for Zurich, Basel, and Lausanne. And so maybe can you share about how that was for you? How was the transition coming for Europe? What did you learn? What were the struggles and the wisdom in that experience?
Yeah, so that a little bit was an accident. The way I ended up in Switzerland, Germany was a choice. They put together a team in Germany with all these ex NHLers, and actually they weren't really well prepared. So that was a one year thing. But then I got invited to the Spangler Cup, and it's a tournament in Davos, and had a great tournament, made the All Star team, and then Zurich through someone, a friend I knew who was an agent, said they're interested in having you. So I said, why not? I'll try it for a year. A year turned to two, two turned to four, and eventually I got married. So it was a bit of an accident, and got onto the stage of Swiss hockey, which first time I didn't know what an import was. An import was, we had, I think, 3 or 4 when I played different years. So, and I saw that, wow, imports were treated a little bit different, or there was a certain amount of pressure, which is something I always struggled with. And now I was, having to be this import and have an impact. And Zurich was rebuilding. In my first year, I got hurt, and they re-signed me a second year. And second year is when we won our first back-to-back championships, and the fourth year we went to the finals. So that stretch for me was a pretty significant one in just learning how to win. Was probably realizing, I think what I realized is, because I was not, like, I was anxious, all season, and then playoffs came, I was kind of used to, you say there's always a positive to everything. Well, I was kind of used to that, and maybe for other players, it was like they were more relaxed during the season. So I usually performed really well in the playoffs. And so that second year, this is the story that I wanted to share. Like, I was having a hard time sleeping, because when I thought of like winning the championship, I thought of like, I can't let the whole city down, So imagine the weight you're carrying. But we were game 6 at home. Zurich had not won in 39 years, and full house at the Hallenstadion. And the game goes 1-1, 1-0, 1-1, 2-1, 2-2, 3-3. And that whole game, like, I didn't sleep the night before, but that whole game I was really anxious. And I remember I just said, I got to keep my mind focused on something other than, negative thoughts. So I kept repeating a mantra that I just kind of came up with. I said, I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to make a difference. And I kept repeating that every time I went to the bench. Anytime I thought, the mind tended to drift. And so what happened was, there was 3-3, and about 45 seconds, their player picks up the puck behind the net, goes through the middle zone, loses it. Our guy picks it off and goes into their end. And I'm on the ice, and it's like slow motion, because everybody's kind of backing up. There's, 15 seconds left. And I see this big gaping hole. Puck comes, pass. I just shot one-timer, puck went in, and we won the championship 10 seconds to go. So I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I was saying, make a difference. And like, and then this happens, and I'm going like, man, there's got to be some sort of relationship between what I'm telling myself and It was really, weird. I've shared it, but I mean, I was doing that the whole game. So, and that's what I happened. And I was like kind of in some ways the hero because I had scored the winning goal, and then the 10 seconds went, and then the whole place erupted. People came on the ice. Zurich, it was the first time we won in 39 years, and we went on the next year and we won again. So that was a really pretty surreal experience in terms of the relief and the emotions you feel after scoring a goal like that. Just having the courage, to go through, not sleep, and just want to go out there and play. And so, in some ways, I felt I was rewarded, but it was pretty surreal experience.
I love it because I also more and more believe in mantras, and the young athletes I coach, we use them a lot. And I don't think I've ever shared this story. If you don't mind, when I was in the U.S., I played in junior college, and it was my first year. I got hurt. I tore the ligaments in my ankle, and it was like 2000. And back then, European players, we were seen as, the weak Europeans, and there comes another European and he gets injured and he doesn't play. And so that was the feeling I had of people seeing me. Um, and so at the end of the year, there was a little free throw contest. It wasn't much, but the coach organized the contest. There was a little money involved, so whoever would win. And so we lined up in the free throw line, and whenever you missed, you were eliminated. And so I was one of the best shooters with my roommate, a great guy, really nice guy. Everybody loved him, Mr. Nice Guy. And so I feel myself getting a little soft because I've already noticed that a few times in my life before, that in some ways I don't really, I mean, I want him to win because I feel bad. And so it just popped in my mind. I kept repeating a mantra. It's the first time in my life I did that. But the mantra I said was, I'm going to beat this SOB. I had to become kind of violent in my mind,
Yeah.
but I didn't know mindfulness, I didn't know mental training, but I just felt it put my mind in a certain focus. And I mean, it was swish every shot. And I keep repeating, I'm going to beat this SOB. I'm going to beat this SOB. And it was just experimental. But yeah, I mean, I truly believe in the power of mantras. So thanks a lot. And yeah, great. Man, I didn't know that. That's a great story. Thank you. Um, and so there's now, so you play in Switzerland, and I think in 2012 you stop your pro career. And again, I think that's a big step for professional athletes. I didn't play at your level, but I still played high level basketball. And so basketball defined me, and I stopped at 29. And I realized it took 2 years to go through a grieving. I felt something in me die in my identity, like when I stopped playing basketball, because I'm not a basketball player anymore. That's not how people see me. So I just can't imagine how it is for a professional player of your standard to go through that phase of retiring. So maybe can you speak a little bit on that?
Yeah, I definitely for me was a really a tough process. And, sometimes I think in some ways I wasn't ready. I didn't fully prepare. There are athletes who are more prepared. They look at life, from a holistic view, but I wasn't. So I tried different things and coaching and really realized that a lot of things that I didn't fully deal with because hockey was something I got really good. There was a lot of passion and I'd worked so hard. So I had instant success, in my 80s, in my 18s. And this is not usual. Most of the time people, they struggle until they're 30 and then they start getting success. But in sports, it's a little bit different. So you see a lot of athletes who struggle afterwards because the success and money comes very quickly. But I realized that I didn't. What a quality that's really important is leadership qualities, is the way you handle yourself, and realize that there was a lot of parts of me that were underdeveloped that I could hide as an athlete because I had the skill. And I think it wasn't until I got divorced and that I really, really struggled that now I said, okay, now it's really time to commit and say, what do I want to do? And then go back to what Axel said, the endurance. Like I find myself at 56, the endurance is different. I had it when I was young more physically. Now it's more in my spirit and my mind. It's like I don't care if you know, I'll find a level of success if it takes me till I'm 70, but I feel like I'm on a mission. And I think I felt like that when I was a kid. I was a kid because at 10, I watched the Montreal Canadiens and I said, this is what I want to do. But now it's different. Now it's more holistic. I want to enjoy the process. And one of the things is I want to do public speaking and do a TEDx talk. So I have all these ambitions, but what I want to do is enjoy the moment. I want to enjoy the struggle. I want to be more mindful, more present of the way I'm showing up, and I want to include others. So it really feels a whole lot different. And I don't know where it's going to lead to, but I know one of the things I struggled as an athlete is I don't remember the Olympics because I was so worried about outcomes. I was so worried about, will this go well? So you asked me, what were the opening ceremonies? It's a blank, honestly. And that's kind of sad in a certain way because, our lives, the things that we remember is really how present we are to the moment. So I feel I'm on this calling to show my children they didn't see me at my best, but to like show them that you can bounce back from anything. And also now it's more in terms of service, helping others. But I think communicating is something that is so important. And I think mindfulness is so tied to being able to communicate well because you have to sense what's the other person, who's in front of you, what's their world like. So I do feel like I have a second opportunity and I want to do it a little bit differently with a lot more attention, care, and devotion.
And you just said something that really resonated is you said you want to include others. I think you said that, and I think that's really something important also. Um, I think as an athlete, if we play on team sports, there's the team, but there's also like a individual path that you're following. And for me, advancing with others and connecting and not being scared that people are gonna steal what you're doing and all. For me, it's really important to let go of this sense of competition in whatever I'm doing, even if it's a professional thing. And I think that's so important. So maybe you can share on that, but also I want to put light on something you posted on the LinkedIn post that also I found beautiful. And is that you shared that after your divorce, you felt really alone. And in that LinkedIn post, I love the difference between solitude and loneliness. And you said you discovered the benefit and the importance of solitude. So maybe can you talk about these two things, like advancing and connecting with other people, but also maybe the importance of solitude. And I love what you shared is that being alone is seen like negatively. And it's true. I read that was really an insight because in movies, somebody that's alone, he's either he's sad or he's a loser or, you know, being alone is not seen positively. So maybe can you talk on these two aspects?
Oh, wonderful question. And I think we can escape in many different ways. We can escape through, someone can be always going to social things and going out, but deep down they might feel alone, and it's like they carry that, but they're trying to, escape through that external vice. It makes me think of a movie I saw with the actor from Ocean's 11, George Clooney. He was this big time actor. Everybody knew him. They'd stop him on the street. But when his acting, when he started getting older, you realize like all this fame, like at the end, he was totally lonely. Like he was always in the spotlight, but the contrast was like he didn't build no relationships. So he felt this loneliness once his acting was gone. Once he stopped having the fame, he felt alone and he felt like such a failure. And it sort of just like it was a aha moment that for me, the divorce that I had kind of forced me into, checking in with myself. And it was really a gift because sometimes you have to check in with these parts of yourself that you might have, how would I say that you might have avoided because you had so much going on and you were always busy with hockey. And I think that was the gift. I realized that by being alone, by being in this, the solitude, I started feeling more and more connected with myself. And so my relationship started getting better, the way I related to my kids, and it's really counterintuitive. So that's what I would share. It's almost like life put me in these circumstances to learn a lesson.
Thank you so much for all that. To finish up our talk, I'm sure we could talk for hours, but to finish up the time we have today, I want to quote one of your LinkedIn posts where you proposed you asked the people reading that to picture yourself standing at your tombstone and you suggest to see it clearly, not to be afraid, and to ask oneself, how do you want people to feel when they remember you? Did they just remember the roles you played, or did you touch their hearts? So now, what is the answer for that for you today?
Uh, for sure, when I think of my medals, like a medal, silver medal, those things, they don't mean much to me. It's really about the experiences you have. And the experience would mean nothing if there wasn't, people around, if you didn't bring value to others. And so if I was to go back, from the older, wiser self, which as we get older and, speaking to the younger self is like, take it all in, take your time, learn to be present. That's why I think mindfulness is one of the most amazing gifts. When you teach your mind to be settled, you start to realize you're going to have, different experiences. There's going to be, storms, there's going to be great moments. But I think when you're fully present, you're going to have the capacity to influence and in a whole different way versus being, in this reactive mode that you see society, a lot of society just reacting to everything that's going on. Well, being mindful and mindless are two different things. It simply means that you're not on autopilot. You're actually being really intentional about how you want to shape this experience. And so, whether, like I was watching Canada against the US, you're there having an experience. So, you get to shape it. And if you're mindful, you'll have more ability to shape it. And I think if you're mindless, you're just going to be on sort of autopilot and reacting to life. So, a good question to ask is, what kind of experience do I want to have? How do I want to impact this person? And you can even, it becomes something you do from moment to moment in a simple conversation with someone or being on a podcast. And what I've realized is that my life feels so much richer because of it.
Thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and your authenticity, vulnerability. I think that's the true strength nowadays and power. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Jackson. I had much fun, so thank you for that.